how did the whole project kind of start? What was your impetus for beginning this? Because you followed around other great sports figures, Tiger Woods among them. And so why the Patriots? Why this dynasty?
Well, I'd been watching the the Patriots dynasty evolve over years, and eventually after the team lost to the Eagles in the Super Bowl at the start of 18, that's when I reached out to the team. And specifically, that's when I wrote to Robert Kraft and introduced myself as a stranger, stranger to him, but stranger to the team. Like Stacey James didn't know who I was. I had no connection here. And eventually, Robert wrote me back. I laid out in a letter pretty clearly what I wanted to do and how I wanted to go about it. And eventually, 6 months later, I was up here and started meeting people. And this was Tom's second to last season. So I came in as the Patriots were starting the season that would lead to the Super Bowl against the Rams.
So coming off of Malcolm Butler.
Yes, that's when I entered the picture. And so I was kind of embedded with the organization for Tom's last two seasons. And I finished writing the book. The last scene I wrote was when Tom went to Robert's house to tell him he was leaving. In the middle of that process, 2 years of working on the book, about halfway through, I decided, like in my mind, I could see this as a docuseries. I could see it as a movie. And frankly, I could see it as a Broadway production. I mean, it had all the elements for all three. And so I was thinking about that as I started to put pen to paper and write it. And I let the team know early on that I was interested in the prospect of trying to turn it into a docuseries. And I went into overdrive to try to have that happen as soon as I finished writing, which was right when Tom left. So that's March 2020, which is why it's easy for me to date it. And I turned my attention to that pretty right away, because there's like a 6-month gap between when I finished writing and when the book went on sale in September. And in that window, that's what I started working on. And one of the things I did very early was I sent an early copy of the book to Matt Hamachek, who would end up becoming the director, because he directed the transformation of my Tiger Woods book into a documentary for HBO. We worked together on that. So I knew his...
I'm sorry to jump in, but where was he at the time? Was he kind of...
So all filmmakers...
Is he independent? He's
not. All
okay.
those guys are. All those guys are. And so I was thinking he would be great for this project because I had worked with him on Tiger, and I knew he had a really different take on storytelling. And so that was one part of it, is finding the right director, a partner to work with, a good storyteller, someone that I thought would fit in Foxborough. Because there's a lot of great filmmakers out there, but it doesn't mean they're going to fit into this environment and be able to navigate like Matt could. And then being able to get Imagine to come aboard as a production partner and Apple TV Plus as a streamer. And I made a decision that I didn't want to be hands off and just turn this over to someone. Look, I'm pretty candid about this. Like, I put my heart and soul into the story. This means more to me. I've written 17 books, and this one's different because it's more personal to me. It's my home. This is New England. It's not a story that happened on the other side of the country. It happened right here, and I put more into this. And there's a reason that when I wrote the last scene of the book, which is Tom going to the house to say goodbye, I mean, that was hard for me to write. Forget objectivity. I'm not into that as a writer. I'm into the emotion of it, trying to, I want people to feel it in their heart. I want it to hurt because it hurt me. And so when I wrote that last scene, I wrote that in one weekend in my office in New London, and I listened to Abbey Road the whole time I was writing it. And I needed to feel that when I was writing it, because when New England fans read it, it needs to crush you, because that's what it was like. And I didn't want to just then walk away and say, okay, someone else go make the docuseries. No, I wanted to make it with them.
So it's interesting just hearing you and watching you, and just, candidly, we can feel the emotion now, right? Like, I can see it on your face. You're not a Patriots fan. And so it's
Yeah,
like
but-
I get being a little like I saw Brian Cox knocking people's heads off and I got emotional.
Yeah.
But that's as a Patriots fan. Like
Yeah.
I get that. Like you're getting emotional now
Yeah.
as a non-Patriots fan. So why?
Well, I grew up a Dolphins fan here in New England just because when I was a little kid, the first time I was old enough to watch football on television, Miami went undefeated. And a lot of my friends, we became Miami fans because we loved their uniforms and because they were the best team. And so I went to Foxborough once a year to watch the Patriots and the Dolphins, and with strict rules to keep my mouth shut because our parents said, we don't want to get in trouble here. Just watch the games.
Yeah, don't talk and don't flush the toilets in there because they don't work. Yeah,
That's right. But the fact of the matter is, by the time Brady came here and things started to change with Belichick and Brady, my admiration for this team and what they were building was just incredible, and I became. I am a Patriots fan now. I don't want to lie about the past. I grew up the way I did, but I live in an area in Connecticut where so many Giants fans converted. They converted. And so I was a Dolphins fan that converted.
So I'm wondering, as you know that this series is going to come out over
Yeah.
the last football season,
Yeah,
you're watching what's happening with the Patriots and the record that they put up.
sure.
And the writing was on the wall for a lot of people what was going to happen to Bill at the end of the season. How do you feel now about this series coming out when every part of the dynasty, except for the Kraft family, you kind of look at it through these three lenses of Brady, Belichick, and Kraft, and it's not that simple, but those are the
Right.
three main players. How do you feel now that another major piece is removed from New England?
It's interesting that you bring that up because when I was writing the book, obviously I have no control over things like timing, but the book came out as Tom was starting a new chapter in Tampa Bay. And the Patriots dynasty, in my mind, it ended the moment Tom left. Because you define dynasties by teams that win 3 or more championships together with the same nucleus. When a member of the nucleus leaves, when Joe Montana leaves San Francisco, it's over. Doesn't mean they can't start a new dynasty and win more, but the dynasty of the 49ers, that was it. Joe's gone. He built that dynasty. And so when Tom Brady leaves, the dynasty that we all saw in New England with 6 championships, the dynasty ended when Tom left. So now we're now working on the docuseries for the next 3 years, which is this massive undertaking. And the whole time that we're working on it, Bill's still coaching. And that's not really a big part of our story until we have to figure out how to end the docuseries. I'm not going to give the ending away, but we realize as we're making this series that we're going to have to deal with that the same way I realized as a writer in the book, I was going to have to deal with Tom. And so it's fortuitous as storytellers and documentary filmmakers that Bill left when he did. It was kind of perfect timing for what we were doing selfishly, not necessarily for the team.
So can I ask, you don't have to reveal this if you don't
Sure.
want to, but I've heard Bill spoke one time and spoke with you guys before the season started, correct? This wasn't filmed in season last year?
That is correct.
Okay.
We were filming over a 2-year period.
But Bill was one time, and it wasn't like in November last
We-
year when the writing was on the wall.
No, we would never have asked someone with his job responsibilities to, sit with us for a lengthy on-camera interview. I mean, it was much more professional and appropriate to do that in the off season. Same thing with players like Devin McCourty, Matthew Slater, when they're playing. I mean, we don't want to, because we're not looking for a 5-minute, this is not a quick hit. We're asking for an investment from them on their time, their thoughts. And so we were careful. Now, we're dealing with retired players. It's different. Those are guys we would interview during the season because they're not playing anymore. So Adam Vinatieri, Willie McGinnis, Randy Moss, Teddy Bruschi, Rodney Harrison, Ty Law, Lawyer Malloy, I mean, and on and on and on. Those guys were done in season.
So with Bill, and I've not seen everything. I didn't have a screener. I've seen the first 2 episodes, but I've heard, read, and you can even see it in the first 2 episodes. Bill does seem different than the other people participating. Like the word I used earlier, he seems stiff. What was your vibe on Bill's willingness to participate and be forthcoming in this?
I think what you just said is absolutely accurate, and it was authentic. He is what you see, and that's what's different about writing a book and making a docuseries is there are cameras, and the camera is just trained on one person. It's frankly it's trained on you from the neck up, and so you can look deep into the penetrating eyes of everybody who's on camera. So when Tom's eyes well up, you feel it. It's just different. It's different than listening to an audio clip or reading a quote on a page. Sometimes the best camera work in a docuseries is when no one's saying anything, and you're just staring at the person, staring at the camera. And those are some of the best moments in the film. There was some incredible camera work done by our cinematographers and some patience by Matt Hamachek in the interview process, where Matt did most of the interviews in the series. Not all of them. We had a number of producers who did some interviews. But that hesitancy is what allows the viewer to feel like they're in the room.
Did you get the sense that, I guess I'll just ask this and you don't have to respond if you are not able to. Was Bill a very enthusiastic participant when it came to the docuseries, or was it something where it took a little bit of a while to, did you always know he was going to be signed on to it?
Does he look enthusiastic?
No, he does not. He does not.
I guess, okay, I don't want to say willing participant because he did participate and he sat with you guys and he took the questions and he answered the questions. So did you always know that he was going to be part of the series? Was there ever a question that he wouldn't be a participant in the series?
No, I think you don't know things. You hope. And we had 2 years, more than 2 years for kind of the filming process. And we needed every bit of that because it takes time to get, it is not easy to get people to do this. It's not like everyone was lined up saying, when can I go? When can I go? It's not like that. Well,
I know Wiggy was. Wiggy is lined up, and he'll still do it. Wiggy will still do it for you.
So, I mean, for the most part, it is a lengthy process. The first interview we did for this whole thing was Paul Tagliabue, and he's not even in the series. You know, there's a process that goes through this, and it coalesces.
Goodell?
No, Tagliabue.
Paul Tagliabue.
I'm saying the first interview we did for this whole process was Paul Tagliabue, and he didn't even end up making the cut. I mean, there was plenty of people that we interviewed that didn't make it. It's just you go through this process, and I think that one of the things that we had on our side was we had time. And so as more and more people hear who else has now gotten on board, and one of the funniest moments, I'll share this with you because it's just hilarious. Randy Moss, as you know, doesn't do many interviews. And I was thrilled when I got him for the book, but I didn't ever get to actually sit down and talk the way we are face to face. I sent him the questions, and he recorded a recording on the sideline at halftime of a Monday Night Football game and sent me a digital card with his answers. That's how I interviewed Randy. It was worked and it great, but were we going to get him for this? We didn't know. And then finally we had an agreement from him to sit for like 90 minutes. He came to the studio and he walked in, and we were giving him the background of how it goes and saying to him, you don't have to worry about language. This is not Disney Plus. You can just...
It certainly is not, by the way, through the first 2 episodes.
Some good liberal use of F-bombs and things like that. Yeah, it's good.
There is a lot of F-bombs. It's authentic, though. This is how everybody is talking because it's not sterilized, which is why it's real. And so we were just explaining things like that because they don't know. Like, do we have to say F instead of the word? It's things like that. And also wanted to give them a sense of what some of the other guys had said. And we shared one thing that Julian Edelman had told us about Bill. And we shared that with him just to give him a sense of how open and candid some of the other guys had been. And Randy looked at Matt and I, and he goes, he said that? And we were like, yeah. And he goes, all right, it's on. Let's go. And he gets in the chair, and he was in the chair for like 5 hours.
Wow. Now, is that more than other subjects, or is that pretty common for what you were talking about?
Well, it's great for us if we can get that from someone. But I will just tell you that I walked away from the Randy Moss interview thinking, holy cow, like this guy didn't need to play football. He could have gone to Hollywood. He should have his own show on Netflix for stand-up. He's funnier than anybody that I've watched on television that has a comedy show. And his ability to tell stories is just, I mean, without doing a spoiler, but trust me, when he enters the series, which is in the 07 season, obviously, so you're going to get him in the 4th episode, it's like, holy cow, we've just gone to another level. He's going to tell stories that just blow your mind.
Okay, Ryan, book Randy Moss if you could. If you could get him on the show. Let's
looking right now.
We'll get the number from Jeff. So was there anybody, and it's Jeff Benedict, the author and executive producer of the Dynasty here on WEEI with Jones and Mego and Arcan. Was there anybody who said no?
Was there anyone who said no? That's a good question. I'm trying to think.
Or just ghosted?
There might have been a couple of people outside the organization that said no, but nobody that we thought was really important to get. Like, we did cast the net, and there were a few people that we didn't hear back from. I was like, yeah, whatever.
Wiggy.
But not within not within the Patriots family. And when I say that, I mean past and former players, coaches, people in their universe. No. Was there someone like from another team? Because we do interview some rivals. I think there were a few people we did request interviews with on the outside that played for other teams that didn't, but not anybody that we were like, oh, that's a big bummer.
Were there any topics that were off limits?
Absolutely not.
So the only reason I ask is, and I don't know if it sounds like this broke embargo, but there was a piece in The Athletic that came out and
Right.
looked ahead, and it was about Malcolm Butler, and it sounded like Bill really wasn't willing to go there and maybe had a working agreement not to go there. There was nothing that was off limits.
No working agreements, and just because Bill wasn't willing to go there didn't mean everybody else didn't go there.
So we get the answer on Malcolm Butler.
So I'm just saying.
Are we getting the answer?
Just because Bill said he wasn't going to talk about that, there were no agreements with anybody about what wouldn't be talked about. Because think about it. When you think about, well, what would be the sensitive areas that we don't want to talk about in this documentary? Well, there's Spygate. There's a lot of people that don't want to deal with that. There's Aaron Hernandez. That's a very uncomfortable topic. There's Deflategate. There is the soul-crushing loss to the Giants in the first Super Bowl after the 07 season and why that happened. There's the fact that Malcolm Butler didn't play. There's the fact that Donald Trump interjected himself into the Patriots organization at a very controversial time. I'm just saying we covered every single one of those things in the series. I covered all those things in the book. So it's not, it would be ridiculous to write about it in a book and then do a docuseries and go, well, let's dance around Spygate. We probably don't want to ask people that because it makes them uncomfortable. That's the reason to ask them about it.
So, do you mind sticking around a little bit longer,
Sure.
Jeff? Okay, so we're gonna stick here with Jeff Benedict, the author of the Dynasty, which is on sale. Where can people get the Dynasty in book form? Where can they get that now?
Everywhere that is sold, but we love it when you buy it at independent bookstores.
Okay. Independent bookstores, but wherever you want to get your hands on it. And, of course, the first 2 episodes are dropped on Apple TV. If you haven't seen them, you're missing out. Still 8 episodes to go, including Randy Moss's debut, which comes with the seal of approval from Jeff Benedict. We have more coming up next year on WEEI. So I wanted to ask you a variety of things.
Sure.
And as I was telling you in the break, I'm a curmudgeon. I don't like most stuff. But I was eating up the nostalgia of this. And I think it's a good time for Patriots fans, because the team was so bad last year, and Bill's gone, and Brady's been gone, and the outlook's a little bleak. And so I think the timing is very good, as you said, for this to be coming out. If you wanted to let listeners know, how much new stuff is in it? If there's somebody, a Patriots fan, who's like, well, I've seen Man in the Arena, and I've seen the America's Games, and I've seen Do Your Job, and I've seen Bill Belichick, A Football Life. I've seen all this Patriots stuff. What is in this that is new to fans that maybe they haven't seen?
So we had access to, roughly 35,000 hours of archival video that had never been, not only had it never been looked at, it had never even been logged. I mean, the Patriots have been filming internally for 20 years.
And so no intern was even like, hey, this is so-and-so play.
No, and so they didn't even know what they had. And so for anyone to say, oh, well, we've seen this and this, actually, no, you haven't, because nobody had. And then on top of that, I'm not saying there's not footage in here that people have seen before. Of course there is. But we tried really hard to make the majority of the non-game footage. I'm not talking about the football footage, but everything else. We tried to have a majority of that be original because we wanted people to see things they've never seen before. And then we asked the players oftentimes if they had handheld, the old-fashioned cameras where they were filming stuff. And that's the stuff that when you're watching it, you can tell they filmed it. It was not professionally shot, but that's what makes it so compelling. It's not edited, it's raw. And you're seeing Tom Brady when people hardly knew who he was.
So, Mego, this is what you love. This is like the stuff in Brady's apartment.
Favorite part of the first 2 episodes was
Yeah.
the condo that Brady got from
Yeah.
Ty Law and them going back and forth about, I gave him a break because he's a young guy coming up, and Brady's going, he ripped me off.
He fleeced me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's don't let him tell you got a
But the
deal.
footage of him playing pool with the offensive
That's
line,
right.
it's really awesome stuff.
No one's ever seen that. If anyone says I've seen that before, they're just not being truthful. That's never been out there.
I do want to ask because I have seen a little bit of some of the later episodes.
Yeah.
And I'm very surprised at the candor around some of the difficult subjects that you tackle, including the Aaron Hernandez
Yes.
story. And I guess I'm just wondering, was there Kraft sign off on a final cut, that they looked at? Because I will say that the Crafts do put themselves in situations at different points where I think they're being very honest, and it doesn't always paint them in the most attractive light,
Right.
where you look at it and go, oh, well, this is a Kraft production.
Right. I think anybody who tries to frame this as a craft project, and I know people said some similar things like that about my book, that would be news to Simon & Schuster, and it would be news to Apple TV. Because if you think about it, this series, just like the book, is filled with things that they'd rather not have people read about and watch. I mean, there's some really hard subject matter here that if you were controlling the project and you were writing your own narrative, that's the stuff you write out. If it's a memoir, it's your memory. You remember it the way you want to remember it, and you control it. The book is not a memoir. I did a memoir with Steve Young. He owns the copyright. It's his book with his name on it, and he hired me to write it. That's not what I did with LeBron. That's not what I did with Tiger, and that is not what I did with the Dynasty. If it had been, the Aaron Hernandez story doesn't get covered multiple chapters. We don't deal with Donald Trump and all the horrible things he said about African-American players. That stuff wouldn't be in the Patriots version of the book, and it wouldn't be in the series. And I think for me, as a storyteller, one of the things that I really appreciated and admired about the Crafts and the Patriots was their willingness to allow the story to go where the story goes. And I think that's why Matt Hamachek would never have signed on to make the series if he didn't have Final Cut. I mean, you can get anyone to come in and make a, whatever you want to call it, a tribute film, right? There's plenty of those out there. This is not that. But however, how can you not watch this and come away with just immense respect for what's gone on here for the last 20 years?
So this was my fear of this when it was first announced that it was
Sure.
coming out, was this is Kraft staking his claim on, Brady has Man in the Arena. Bill has done tons of stuff with NFL films where it gets his brilliance out there.
Sure.
This was Kraft's answer. So this is my fear. And I saw the first 2 this morning, and Mego made this point, even just on something as simple as Bledsoe and Brady,
Sure.
Kraft does not come across great there. He's like, I wanted Bledsoe. And I made it clear to Bill, if you screw up, I'm going to hold you accountable, which to me means you're getting fired. You're going to lose your job. And so I was fearful of that, and I've been encouraged, in the first 2 that I've seen. What sort of credit do you think Robert deserves for the 20 years? Because I do kind of look at it and I go, it's Brady. Then I would put Robert at the bottom of that list. Where do you view him fitting into that hierarchy and being around him? How do you think he views the credit he gets? Does he feel he gets enough credit?
That's a great question. There's that you actually asked more than one question.
That's
there.
true. That's true.
But
There's a lot there. That's true.
but all three things you asked are all related to the same person. So, I mean, let me just take them one at a time. I'll try to be quick on them. So, I think here's the first major thing that he does is he hires a coach that no one else thinks is worth hiring. And he gives him the job, and Bill's grateful. Before he coaches his first game in Foxborough, which was against Tampa Bay in 2000, Bill comes in and thanks him for the opportunity to coach his team. And that's when he said, maybe we'll be as successful as these two fellas, Babe Ruth and Ted Williams. Pretty crazy thing for Bill to say, proved to be true. The second thing that Robert does, which is monumental, is he gives Bill the latitude to do something that Robert thinks doesn't make a lot of sense, which is we have a guy here who's considered one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, and I'm paying him $103 million. Not only that, I just gave him that new contract last year. And by the way, you were the coach at the time, and you were at the press conference with me. What are we doing? And I'm talking about when after Drew is cleared medically to play, and most people assumed he would get his job back, even the players. Ty Law talked about that. Lawyer Malloy, Willie McGinnis, the veterans. All the veterans were shocked that Drew didn't just slide back in, and Drew was shocked. But here's where you have to understand how Robert operates. It's a nuance, but it's so important. When Drew goes to see Robert, which, by the way, anybody who had the access to Robert that Drew had would have done the same thing. So no fault of Drew that he goes to the owner and says, hey, this isn't right. Because it really wasn't right, meaning it was abnormal. And what does Robert say? He says, I'll talk to Bill. He doesn't say, I'll twist his arm. He says, I'll talk to him. That's not meddling. When you go to talk to Bill, what does Robert do? He doesn't go tell Bill what he wants. He goes and says, explain to me, what are we doing? And after listening to Bill explain why he wants to stick with Tom, that's where the conversation stopped. Meaning he never says, well, this is what I want. He just says, he hears what he says. And if you're around, I had the luxury of being around Robert a lot in the last 5 years, working on these two projects. He's an incredible listener. And a lot of times he's just asking questions and not saying anything. And he does that here, and this is why it's important, because when he goes back to Drew, he doesn't tell Drew, I told Bill what I want. He says, after talking to Bill, I don't think it's in your best interest or mine for me to force this issue. I could, but I didn't.
But he says he'll hold him accountable.
He says he'll hold him accountable. That's a different thing, right? And so Drew doesn't like that answer. And then history proves that Bill was actually right. And so then Robert admits that it really wasn't until the Snow Bowl game, and then a couple weeks later at the Super Bowl, and really that last-minute drive against the Rams. And the moment that Robert talks about is when they made that last drive to set up the Vinatieri kick. It's really that last play when Tom spikes the ball, and it's the way he spikes it. It's not with speed. It's not with urgency. It's like time has stopped, and Tom spikes the ball almost like a yo-yo. It comes up, he catches it, and he gently hands it to the ref. And Robert told me, he said, when I watched that from the box, that's when I knew this guy is different.
So, look, we'll leave it there. I know there's a lot we want to cover. There's a lot to get to. We'll continue to discuss this here today. But Jeff Benedict, if you don't have your copy of The Dynasty yet, go out and get it. Local bookstores encouraged. You should watch the first two episodes on Apple TV+. Watch them tonight on NBC Sports Boston. Jeff, we really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
All right, Jeff Benedict, the author of The Dynasty and executive producer. First two episodes now on Apple TV+. They drop every Friday over the next month.